Come on!
Good gaming, everyone. Welcome to the one and only Neutral Podcast on YouTube. You can go anywhere to hear what you want to hear, but you can only come here to hear the truth. Today we're going to talk about the gameplay reveal of Sony's upcoming first-person games as a service, I guess, multiplayer shooter, Concord. And not just Concord, we're going to talk about the reaction it's been getting online and whether it's fair or warranted. Now, when it comes to gaming media and social media, with the exception of a few, it is as corrupt as any media you can actually think of. But I will say this, and I will give them this. Upon first reaction, I understand the reaction. I had expectations for what I thought Concord would end up being, and it was not that. I will say I thought it would lean more towards No Man's Sky, Starfield with multiplayer than it would towards Overwatch. So that was a surprise. Now, nothing wrong with making a hero shooter. Apparently, unless you're Sony. Now, we see gaming developers take inspiration from each other time and time again. I've brought up the similarities to Mario Maker, to Little Big Planet. Of course, a lot of the sim racing genre owes their inspiration to Gran Turismo. Tons and tons of games take inspiration, darn near clone each other. And it only becomes viral and a huge issue when Sony does it. Apparently, Sony has fallen into that old trope of when you're on top, especially for a significant amount of time, people will find any reason to bring you down or any way to bring you down. And I think the way they do it with Sony is, well, multiple ways, but one way is they tend to say, oh, they copy and they paste. They can't do, anytime it's a multiplayer or a game that's not third-person narrative-driven movie games, then it's an issue. And then they turn around and say Sony only makes third-person narrative movie games. So I'm not going to fall into either category because on both sides it's an issue. The Sony fans, especially the fanboys, typically want Sony to stick with the movie games, and the haters, or whatever you want to call them, they complain about Sony making only movie games, and then when they do, no matter what it is, they find an issue with it. And I was in the center of this, I feel like, because I was one of the people pushing Helldivers heavy on its rollout, and no one really saw Helldivers becoming what it became. 12 million sold in a few months, making Sony tons of money. And coincidentally, the only time it really started to falter was when they said, well, you have to create this launcher that connects it to Sony, that makes it really solidifies it as you're playing a Sony game on a Sony network or whatever. Because I think it's pretty obvious people want Sony's games, but they really don't want Sony, especially when they're non-PlayStation players or whatever. So let's get to it. That's long enough. That was just the introduction. Let's talk about this. So, as you can see by the title, I'm trying to understand how there was all this hype for Xdefiant, even though it was an obvious Call of Duty clone. Not much, I guess you could say, innovation. And it was called the Call of Duty Killer or Deleter. And, there's huge channels like Penguins and Jack Frags talking about, could this, end Call of Duty? This could be the one, and all these hopes for this game. But it was really a clone. I mean, down to the controls, to everything. Now we come to Concord, and it's just a hero shooter. Yes, it has a lot in common with Overwatch, but so does Valorant, right? And people love Valorant. There are direct characters that have almost the exact same abilities that were taken from Overwatch and put into Valorant, and no one had a problem with it. They loved Valorant. But as soon as Concord comes out, and it's a Sony game, now we're tired of hero shooters. But we're not tired of military shooters. One of the oldest genres in gaming, right? Wolfenstein was a military shooter. Look at it. Go back and look at it. Wolfenstein was a military shooter. 1981. 40 years of military shooters. Some military shooters come out every year. We got tons of military shooters. There's no reason for you to not be tired of military shooters and not say that it's oversaturation. Especially compared to a genre that is 8 years old and has maybe 5 active games right now. Maybe 5 active hero shooters right now. Right? You have Overwatch, Valorant, Apex Legends. Maybe I'm missing something else. I can think of 3. So that's no excuse, right? So if I feel this way, what is, to me, separating Concord from Overwatch, right? To me, Concord, or as far as Overwatch's biggest weakness was the controls. Like, there's definitely a very loose feeling control aiming scheme, and the hit detection, is not as apparent. It doesn't feel as you don't feel like when you're actually hitting the player. It doesn't have the on-screen indication that it's as good as like a Call of Duty, or as good as like a Destiny or Destiny 2. And this is where I think Concord is going to be a fun game. And if given a chance, like Valorant was given a chance, it can really take off. Why do I say that? Well, what are the weaknesses of Overwatch? First, there are 2 big weaknesses, I would say, right? And there are 2 crowds who play, I would say, mainly who play Overwatch. Those who can get into great charismatic characters in multiplayer video games, and they come for that. And those who come to play shooters. The crowd who's into great charismatic characters, they're mostly affected by the lack of balance in Overwatch. And mainly due to these big, shielded tanks, right? Who kind of zone players and zone teams. This game doesn't really have that. I think they purposely made it shielded characters with static stationary shields, or shields that are personal, right? Then it's the shooter crowd. The shooter crowd like tight controls, right? So this is a good merging of 2 worlds. They've learned from Overwatch's bad designs. If you played Overwatch and you really gave Concord a chance, you'd see they learned from mistakes from Overwatch, and they're the Destiny team, and so to speak, because these are Destiny Bungie developers, and Sony bought Bungie, and Bungie's been helping with this game. So now you have Bungie's controls, tight shooter control. So that crowd is going to be held, and then you got these great characters who have their own movement abilities, and no one is acknowledging the dodge mechanic and movement abilities in this game. They have this real Elden Ring, Souls like almost dodge mechanic where you can dodge out of attacks. Some of the projectiles are big, heavy, slow, whatever you want to call it, and you can dodge into cover. There's gameplay of this happening during the presentation. So I think the controls are going to make this more fun than your typical hero shooter, right? And it's not as big, but they do have these character story cutscene vignettes, and that's not for everybody, but it might serve that third crowd that is kind of part of the first crowd who likes great charismatic characters, by serving the movie game Sony guys, right, and have a maybe some sort of cohesive story, you know. So those are the three factors that separates it from most games and separates it from Overwatch. So for all the people who are going to continue to dismiss this as a clone, I want you to go to my Twitter or show me a video of you complaining about Xdefiant being a clone of Call of Duty. Because you were all quiet. Your issue is not with the game, your issue is with Sony, as that's what this community is made of. It's made of trolls. If you're not a troll, you may just be lazy and acting ignorant, and dismissing a game before actually really finding out what it's about. But you're not going to intellectualize your bias. Your problem is with Sony. This game has a lot to offer, and it's probably going to be fun. We'll see. I will be trying to do the beta. Hopefully, maybe it's for everyone. Maybe it's just you have to pre-order the game. We could get into that, whether it should be free to play. That might be another video. But yeah, that's it. Let's keep it real out here. You would have hated many of you would have hated on this game regardless, and many of your problems is due to your own expectations of what you thought this game was going to be. That's it for now. You guys take care till next time.